Ukraine shoots, and it scores 3 times. In a massive hat-trick of attacks, Ukraine has sliced through Russia's air defenses like a knife through butter. The last line of Russian defense was broken, and Ukraine unleashed a hell that wiped out Russian air defenses that shouldn't have ever existed. Now, they're gone forever, and Russia has to face up to the fact that it is more vulnerable than ever with its defenses wiped off the map. And it all started with Ukraine's Alpha Unit. Part of the SBU, or Security Service of Ukraine, the Alpha Unit has spent the last couple of years engaged in a massive campaign designed to cripple Russia's air defenses. These attacks set up the most recent Ukrainian hat-trick, which we'll get to as soon as we've explained the massive assist that the Alpha Unit provided to Ukraine's spectacular strikers. The news of the Alpha Unit's exploits comes from Euromaidan Press and a telegram post published by the SBU itself. The Alpha Unit managed to destroy a substantial portion of Russia's Panzer S-1 air defense systems, at a significant cost per unit that amounts to a serious hole in the Russian war machine's budget. More importantly, the destruction of these Russian air defenses has opened up safer aerial corridors in both Ukraine and Russia that Ukraine is using to strike hard as part of its strategy of damaging the Russian rear to weaken offensives on the front. The SBU explains, noting that the Panzer S-1 is one of the most effective air defense systems that Russia has for countering the middle strike and long-range drones that are becoming increasingly important parts of Ukraine's arsenal. That is why the systematic destruction of Panzer has a strategic goal to break through the enemy's air defense and create corridors for hitting targets in its deep rear. The SBU says, adding, this allows the defense forces of Ukraine to effectively work on military bases, warehouses, airfields, and other facilities of the occupiers. Imagine that this was a soccer match. Russia has built up a line of defenses along with a goalkeeper to stop Ukraine from scoring goals. The only way to get the ball into the back of the net once, never mind the 3 times that we're going to cover in a few minutes, is to find a way around those defenses. Now, Ukraine could have engaged in complex passing moves, forcing the Russian defense to constantly shift until a temporary opening was created to allow a shot on goal. But Ukraine didn't do that. Instead, it just smashed through the defenders, taking them out of the game completely to leave itself with as many free shots on goal as it could ever want. Granted, the soccer analogy starts falling apart when the Russian defense gets blown to pieces. And blown to pieces is the perfect term to use, as the SBU isn't just claiming that Russia lost many of its Panzer S-1. It has the receipts, shot from the perspectives of the very drones that the Alpha Unit used to take out so many of Russia's most important air defense systems. Published on YouTube by Euromaidan Press, the video shows the same thing over and over. A Ukrainian drone descends on its Panzer S-1 target. The air defense system, which is supposed to be capable of taking out drones, never sees what's coming, often because the drone flies so low that the Panzer can't do anything about it. Impact after impact is recorded. Dozens of Panzer S-1s go down. The safe aerial corridors that Ukraine opened up created the shooting opportunities for Ukraine's hat-trick. Every single one of the strikes in that footage is important for Ukraine. The Panzer S-1 is as important to Russia as the SBU claims. According to Army recognition, the Panzer S-1 is a mobile medium-range air defense system that can be quickly transported wherever it is needed. That system has missiles and a gun designed to counter drones and other threats. Its mobility means it can move with the soldiers and equipment it needs to protect. And don't forget about missiles. Ukraine is increasingly using drone missile hybrids to attack Russian targets. Panzer S-1 units fire surface-to-air missiles and use guns to counter these kinds of threats, which potentially closes an avenue of attack for Ukraine. That's why the Panzer S-1 has been such a prominent target for Ukraine and its Alpha Unit. Now, a significant number of them are gone. That alone changes everything. Onto the hat trick. We begin in the illegally annexed Crimean Peninsula. With Russia's Panzer S-1 air defenses so thoroughly weakened, an opportunity opened up for a strike against a BK-16 transport ship that Russia had been using to shuttle troops from Crimea into the occupied territories of mainland Ukraine. This ship wasn't a game-changing target for Ukraine, but it was part of a massive mechanism that Russia uses to continue reinforcing its troop concentrations in the occupied territories. Now, the ship won't ever work again. As Ukraine's general staff reported, the ship was successfully hit as part of an attack that was likely a drone strike. The attack has been confirmed. Reducing offensive potential is precisely what Ukraine did, as the BK-16 is a problem causer for Ukraine. Russia uses the ship for everything from coastal patrol to personnel transportation and coastal landings, making it extremely versatile. The BK-16 also presents a more direct threat than just transporting troops. The front section of the ship's upper deck has been configured so that it can store reconnaissance drones. Drones can be launched directly from the upper deck of the BK-16, and those drones, assuming they're not on one-way missions, can also be recovered on the deck and then stored for later use. Any Ukrainian patrol boats or drones that encounter the ship may also have to deal with its armaments. Ukraine hasn't confirmed whether it struck the BK-16 at sea or in port. The latter seems most likely, which tells us that whatever air defenses Russia once had guarding the port weren't enough to stop Ukraine. For Russia, the loss of a BK-16 wouldn't be huge in any other context, but losing another ship to Ukraine is different. Based on where it was located, we can safely assume that the destroyed BK-16 was part of the Black Sea Fleet, which was supposed to dominate the sea. Highly effective Ukrainian naval operations, primarily using drones and missiles, have constrained the Black Sea Fleet to the point where it is close to being a non-factor in the Ukraine war. And the first of Ukraine's hat trick was scored. The second strike took advantage of Russia's dearth of Panzer S-1 to target an oil terminal. Ukraine's drones traveled a significant distance to score a direct hit on a Russian oil terminal. There was a bonus. The enemy Panzer S-1 anti-aircraft missile and gun complex in the region was also hit. Ukraine is clearly on a mission to wipe out this particular form of Russian air defense, and it's doing an amazing job of removing them from the map. And that brings us nicely to the final strike of the hat trick. Ukraine targeted its own land to show Russian occupiers that the rear is far from safe. The final strike was a 1-2 pass, hitting two separate targets, a repair unit of a Russian artillery brigade and concentrations of troop personnel. The scale of damage is still being assessed, but the message is clear. With so many Panzer S-1s lost, Russia is no longer able to protect these types of vital troop concentrations. This is a systematic dismantlement of Russia's frontline effort made possible by strikes in the Russian rear, which in turn were enabled by groups like the SBU's Alpha unit, opening up the safe aerial corridors that Ukraine's drones and missiles now traverse. Ukraine's strategy is brilliant. Russia has no answer other than standing by and watching as yet more of its equipment gets ruined. The destruction of so many Panzer S-1 opens up blind corridors in the air. These are portions of airspace over which Russia has no eyes. Air defense systems not only take down projectiles, but also provide radar warning for troops. Where once Russian soldiers could try to get into cover, they're now vulnerable because their air defenses and radars are gone. The crippling of air defenses opens up middle-range and long-range strike opportunities. Ukraine's drone missile hybrids can now travel safely toward targets deep inside Russia. Middle-strike drones can wreak havoc on military nodes in the near rear, such as command posts, drone operating units, and troop concentrations. Meanwhile, the financial cost of what the Alpha unit has inflicted is enormous for Russia. The Alpha unit's operations are systematically degrading Russia's defensive and offensive capabilities.